Fantastic. So, hello everybody. My name is Jacqueline. I'm going to be talking a little bit about dog and cat shows, trying to summarize as best I can on this topic. It's possible I might mix up some of the terms because there are a lot of terms, so I chose the most relevant and specific ones. And yeah, so I'll start officially now. The dog and cat shows are supposed to be competitions of the most exemplary examples of that particular breed of cat or dog. Now, a lot of people who are pet owners might say, well, my dog or cat is incredibly beautiful. Why can't it also be in a dog or cat competition? I know of me personally, I have, my family has two cats, and I think they're the most perfect little creatures alive. And, and I don't mind sharing them with pictures as well. And I do have a lot of pictures of them. Now, for anybody who's ever had a dog or pet that they particularly cared for and were well groomed, well fed, you might show them off to a bunch of people. There are people who take it to the next level and are very particular about what kind of pets they breed. Sometimes there's people who are owners and breeders, and they are able to enroll them in certain competitions. Now, I'm going to start a little bit with a brief history about how did dog and cat competitions come about. Now, there seems to be different origin stories, but I chose some of the ones that I thought were personally most interesting. So for the cat show first, one story I read said that the first ever cat show that was done was in the Crystal Palace in London, sometime around 1871. Now, the judge for that show essentially was also the person who first wrote the set of standards for domestic and fancy cat breeds that would be judged in that show. Supposedly, it was such an incredibly popular show that over 20,000 spectators visited the cat show just to go see the cats and show off the cats for those who were selected to participate in the show. I think it kind of goes to show that for anybody who's an Ailurophile, for those who don't know what that word is, it's those people who are completely and unbridledly obsessed with their cats. Now, I was reading that currently there's about 32 registered cat breeds that are allowed to compete in cat shows. The most recent categories that have been added are things like the experimental and provisional category, which is new breeds of cats that are showing up, but they're not fully registered and recognized yet, so they can compete, but they don't win titles. Okay, so that's a little bit about the cat shows. I'm going to talk a little bit about the dog shows now. Now, there's a lot of stories of where the origins of dog shows came, so I'm just going to mention one. So one that was held in 1852 in England, showing off different exotic breeds of dogs. Apparently, based on that one and some other dog shows, over time they started developing breed standards that separated just your regular household pet from the purebred dogs, and eventually coming up with this idea of the pedigree dogs. The standards that were created for dogs and cats essentially are similar, but the ones for dogs focused a lot more on function of the dog. So if you had a hunting dog that was bred to hunt animals, the best standard of that dog would be the one that had the best features for a hunting dog. There were other categories like pastoral breeds of dogs that were dogs bred to help herd livestock. And then a more recent one called toy dogs. If anybody's ever seen those pictures of the really tiny dogs, those are basically dogs that are bred purely for companionship. Now, all of these standards, both for cat shows and dog shows, are very rigorously maintained. And even if there are mixed breeds of animals, they tend to either have a separate competition category, or they're not considered, or they can't enter certain championship categories. I mentioned that for cat breeds, there's about 32 that are registered. For dogs, there's around 200 registered dog breeds. So quite a difference. And I was reading that in 2009, all breeds of dogs had to have a standard that included the health and well-being of the dog, because certain dog breeds, if anybody's aware of like pugs, they tended to have issues of not being able to breathe properly. So more recent dog shows specifically require that breeders of pedigree and purebred dogs have healthy breeding practices. Now, very briefly, I'll mention that one of the oldest dog shows that I could find is the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. Apparently started in 1877, known as an all-breed show, meaning all breeds are welcome to participate. And it's one of the most prestigious dog shows that exist. Now, this is what's known as a benched show, meaning that dogs are required to be displayed in their assigned location, known as benches, and they're not allowed to move around the ring unless they are being handled by a handler. Now, handler is usually the owner, but it can be a paid professional handler who walks the dog around to show them off in the show ring. Okay, now I've mentioned a couple terms in here like breed standards, pedigree, and I'd like to explain some of these. So, in each of and I just realized I wasn't clicking on my on my presentation, but in each of the shows, there are certain described things. I'm going to talk more about the dog one because the dog shows have more categories. So really briefly, they have it divided by classes of dogs. They have it divided by male dogs, it's known simply as dogs, and then female dogs, which in the technical term they're called bitches, but obviously not in the rude way, so please don't be offended by that. That is actually the technical term for a female dog. Then they have the category of best of breed, which are the dogs that best meet the standard of that particular breed. And this will be based on their shape, their weight, their coat type, their eye colors, the shape of their ears, the placement of their feet and tails. It's extremely rigorous in particular. And the have particular judging groups. So as I mentioned briefly, there's the different categories of sporting dogs, working dogs, toy dogs. And here in my slide, you can see that there's 7 recognized dog breed dog categories for judging. Now, for those who are not familiar with what a pedigree or purebred dog or cat is, it's essentially a dog or cat that has been bred from the same breed. And usually the pedigree dogs or cats are those who have been bred in that same breed for a couple generations. Now, to describe briefly what is a best of breed is essentially the best representation of the standards that are recognized in that particular competition. It can change depending on the competition you enroll your furry friend in. Within that, then there's the best in group. So this could be the dog or cat that has won the category of best of breed and goes on to compete with all the other breeds in that particular group. Now from there, the next category that you won't see on my slide is the best in show. So this is the dog or cat that has won the award from the best in group one and can now compete usually at the international level. Okay, and then I'll try to move on to the next slide. So really briefly on this slide, I showed some pictures of what you might see at a dog show. So we can see a furry friend being checked for his coat on the left, another one who's very nicely well groomed with his little ponytail. Now, one difference with dog shows is that they have a athletic category where they are also allowed to do agility trials, or they sometimes in some competitions they dance with their owners or play frisbee, or for dogs that are trained as hunting animals, they have an earth dog category where the best dog who can dig the best hole wins. So dog shows are a little bit more varied than they are for cat shows. Now here, I'm just going to show a quick schedule, for example, of a real list of shows that you might see in a dog competition. So here there's, for example, the flyball tournament, which is a game that dog and owners will play, chasing a ball and catching it and running around. All right, I'll try to move ahead because I'm realizing I'm talking too much and I don't want to go beyond my 12 minutes. Really quickly, the categories of cat shows, a lot more simpler, tends to focus a lot more on the aesthetics of the breed of cat, and will focus on either kittens, on championship levels, and on new breeds of cats. You might notice an interesting category here known as the household pet. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. For anybody who has a dog or cat that is already fixed, meaning that it's been neutered or spayed, usually dog competitions, like the American Kennel dog one, or cat competitions like the Cat Fanciers Association, will require that your pet not be fixed. So they have to be able to make more puppies and kittens. But in a household pet category, it doesn't matter. Your cat or dog could be mixed breed, could be spayed, neutered, it could be uh, any kind of animal, as long as it's well groomed, well, it's healthy, and is able to be handled properly by the judge or the owner. Okay, and I'll just quickly mention that in Toronto, if anybody's ever interested in showing off their cats in particular, there are local cat shows that happen. This is one that I actually attended called the Cat Stravaganza, where people could bring in their household pets. It was a mix of household pets and purebred cats. And for household pets category, for anybody who wants to show off their really beautiful kitty cats, you're able to enroll them. They have to be well trained. You might see in that they have to be okay with being picked up and moved around and handled, because they will have to check for whether the cat is friendly, if it has good temperament, if it has a well-groomed coat. So these household pet categories are the ones that focus a lot more on how well behaved and how comfortable the cat is around people than on whether it meets a breed standard. And usually they like it if they have unusual markings or a very just pleasing appearance in general. Okay, so definitely to wrap up my speech, if anybody is ever interested in learning more about the cat or dog shows, there's a lot of information online, but I personally prefer to just admire any dogs or cats that I see in the park, and maybe talk to the owners about their animals and get a chance to pet them, because at these shows you're usually not allowed to pet the cats or the dogs without permission. Thank you. Mm, true.